January 16, 2026. A cold, gray morning settles over Minneapolis, but the city is anything but quiet. Minneapolis is once again in the national spotlight as news crews gather outside the federal courthouse, their cameras trained on the unfolding drama. The FBI has arrested a suspect linked to the recent vandalism at the Diana E. Murphy Federal Courthouse, a building that has become a symbol of both justice and unrest in the city. During a recent protest, courthouse windows were smashed, sending shockwaves through the community and prompting a swift, coordinated law enforcement response. This arrest is about more than just property damage. It's about the city's ongoing struggle with protest, justice, and policing, and the deep questions these events raise for everyone watching. Minneapolis has become a symbol in the national debate over law enforcement and civil unrest, a city where the echoes of past protests still linger in the air. The arrest sends a clear message. Federal authorities are watching, and they will act decisively when the law is broken, especially in moments of heightened tension. The individual now faces serious federal charges, highlighting the real and lasting consequences that can come from crossing the line from protest to crime. This incident marks a new chapter in a city already marked by tension and division, where every event seems to add another layer to a complex story. In this chapter, we'll break down what led to this moment, the protest itself, and the broader impact on Minneapolis and its people. The story is about more than a broken window. It's about how America handles dissent, justice, and the right to be heard, even in times of turmoil. Understanding these events is key to understanding the state of the nation and the challenges facing communities across the country. We'll examine the timeline, the arrest, and the responses from officials and the community, exploring the emotions and opinions that have surfaced in the aftermath. The Minneapolis courthouse arrest is just one point in a much larger, ongoing narrative, a story that stretches back years and continues to evolve. Our goal is to provide a clear, concise account of what happened, why it matters, and what it means for the future of Minneapolis and the nation. Let's begin with the event that sparked it all and trace the path that brought Minneapolis and America to this pivotal moment. The protest's roots trace back to a tragedy that would soon grip the city and capture national attention. It began with the shooting of Renee Nicole Good by an ICE officer, a moment that would change everything for Minneapolis. This fatal encounter in Minneapolis sent shockwaves through the community, leaving many residents in disbelief and mourning. Details were scarce at first, fueling public anger, confusion, and urgent calls for accountability from both local leaders and citizens. Activists quickly saw the shooting as part of a broader pattern of federal overreach and violence, connecting it to a history of similar incidents. The death of Renee Nicole Good became a rallying cry, sparking organized protests and inspiring people from all walks of life to take to the streets. Demonstrators targeted federal buildings, demanding justice, transparency, and sweeping systemic change from those in power. The Diana E. Murphy Courthouse soon became the focal point for these demands, symbolizing the struggle for justice. Protesters were motivated not only by this specific incident, but also by long-standing grievances with ICE and federal law enforcement practices. The call for a day of action quickly spread beyond Minneapolis, reflecting a wave of national outrage and solidarity. The protest on January 7th wasn't random. It was a direct response to perceived injustice, carefully planned and widely publicized. The shooting was the spark that ignited a movement, uniting people in grief, anger, and determination. Understanding this context is crucial to grasping the intensity and urgency of the protest that followed. The community felt ignored and unheard, and the courthouse became the stage for their demands to be seen and acknowledged. This set the stage for the confrontation that would soon unfold, marking a pivotal moment in the city's history. On January 7th, protesters gathered outside the Diana E. Murphy Courthouse, their anger palpable. The air was thick with tension as people from all walks of life came together, united by a shared sense of injustice. Their voices echoed through the night, demanding to be heard. What began as a loud but peaceful demonstration quickly escalated. The crowd's energy shifted, and the atmosphere grew more charged as the hours passed. Police officers watched closely, their presence a constant reminder of the fragile peace. Suddenly, a group surged toward the courthouse entrance, banging on glass doors and shouting. The noise reverberated off the building's walls, drawing more attention and heightening the sense of urgency. Tensions spiked as some tried to force entry, shifting the protest into chaos. The crowd pressed forward, pushing against the doors, while others pleaded for calm. A window was smashed, an act that crossed the line from protest to crime. The sound of shattering glass marked a turning point, signaling that the situation had spiraled out of control. Law enforcement responded immediately, clashing with the crowd. Officers in riot gear moved in, determined to restore order as the protest devolved into confrontation. The scene turned chaotic, with officers and protesters in direct confrontation. Shouts and sirens filled the air, and the line between protester and police blurred in the confusion. Federal officials labeled the event a riot, citing violence and property damage. The courthouse, once a symbol of justice, now stood scarred by the night's events. The smashed window became a key piece of evidence for investigators. Every shard of glass told a story of the night's turmoil and the anger that fueled it. Law enforcement secured the building, but the damage, both physical and symbolic, was done. The courthouse was now a crime scene, cordoned off and under heavy guard. The protest's transformation into violence justified a federal investigation. Authorities began piecing together what happened, determined to hold those responsible accountable. What started as a call for justice ended in conflict and destruction. The streets were littered with protest signs, a stark reminder of the night's chaos. This escalation would have serious consequences for those involved. Arrests were made, and the mood among the remaining protesters turned somber. The night's events set the stage for arrests and a broader crackdown. Law enforcement vehicles lined the streets, signaling that the authorities were taking a hard stance. The line between protest and crime had been crossed. The community would feel the impact of this night for weeks to come. The investigation was now underway, as officials sought answers and accountability for the violence that erupted outside the courthouse. The FBI moved quickly, using video and evidence to identify suspects in the courthouse vandalism. Within a week, they arrested George James Jones in Minneapolis. He is accused of breaking the courthouse window during the protest. The charges are federal and carry significant penalties. The arrest demonstrates law enforcement's ability to identify individuals in chaotic crowds. Modern technology, security footage, cell phone videos played a crucial role. The message: anonymity in a crowd is no longer guaranteed. For James Jones, the future is uncertain as he faces the federal justice system. His arrest shifts the narrative from protest to personal accountability. The case will move through the courts, watched closely by all sides. The story is now about both the protest's cause and the consequences of criminal action. The investigation continues, but the focus is now on individual responsibility. The legal process is just beginning. The federal response has been swift and uncompromising. FBI Director Kash Patel declared, "Attack law enforcement or federal property, and you will be brought to justice." The Justice Department has increased its presence in Minneapolis, sending more officers and prosecutors. Their goal: deter violence and restore order. Some welcome the added security, others fear it will escalate tensions. The government is drawing a hard line between protest and crime. High-profile arrests and public statements are meant to discourage further unrest. Minneapolis is now a focal point for federal strategy on civil unrest. The outcome of these cases will set a precedent nationwide. The message is clear: federal law will be enforced. The courthouse protest left more than broken glass. It left people injured. 2 officers were hurt during clashes with protesters. On the other side, a demonstrator was blinded in one eye by a crowd control munition. These injuries highlight the real dangers when protests turn violent. For activists, the protester's injury is a symbol of excessive force. For law enforcement, it underscores the risks of maintaining order. The human cost deepens divisions and fuels further anger. These incidents will shape future protests and debates over police tactics. The consequences are measured in pain, not just property damage. Both sides now carry scars from that night. The conflict's toll is personal and lasting. Minneapolis was not alone. Protests erupted nationwide after Renee Nicole Good's death. Demonstrations in other cities like California mirrored the anger and tactics seen in Minneapolis. Acts like flag burning and property damage drew national attention. Activist networks used social media to coordinate and amplify their message. The unrest in one city quickly inspired action in others. The federal response in Minneapolis is being watched by activists and officials everywhere. How one city handles unrest can set a precedent for others. The issues at stake, policing, federal power, justice, are national, not just local. The movement is connected, and the debate is playing out across America. The Minneapolis protest is part of a much larger story. The unrest has disrupted daily life in Minneapolis. Barriers block streets, making it hard for residents and businesses to function. Emergency access is a major concern, with blocked roads risking lives. The city tries to balance respect for protests with the need for public safety. Officials have pledged to keep streets clear while preserving community memorials. The constant threat of new protests creates anxiety and fatigue among residents. Minneapolis has endured years of turmoil, and each new incident adds to the strain. The smashed courthouse window is a symbol, but the real impact is felt in daily life. The city's people are weary, caught between protest and order. The arrest of George James Jones is a turning point, but the underlying issues remain. The justice system will now determine his fate, but the anger over Renee Nicole Good's death persists. The challenge is to address both accountability for crime and the grievances that fuel protest. Dialogue and transparent investigations are essential for healing. The city must balance law enforcement with listening to marginalized voices. Peaceful protest is vital, but violence undermines the cause and invites crackdowns. The injuries from that night are a stark reminder of the human cost. The Minneapolis courthouse story reflects deep national tensions. Moving forward will require empathy, patience, and leadership. The hope is for a better understanding, one that respects both protest and public safety. The nation is watching, looking for a path through conflict to resolution. The story is not over. The next chapter depends on what we learn from this one. Only by facing these challenges together can Minneapolis and America move forward.